I'm Olivia Brooks, and I was 32 years old on the night I learned that my own family thought my body belonged to them. It was Easter dinner. The ham sat in the middle of the table, still hot, with steam rising into the air. My grandmother's old lace tablecloth covered the table like it did every Easter. Everyone was smiling. Everyone looked happy. Then my sister Renee slid a stack of papers across the table toward me. A pen rested on top. "We just need your signature tonight," she said softly. My mother smiled at me. "It's the right thing to do." My father gave me a slow nod. The papers were already printed. Already finished. Already waiting for my name. But they forgot something important. I read contracts for a living. And before that pen ever touched my hand, I had already reached page 4. But to understand why that moment mattered, I need to tell you something first. I work for a hospital network in Springfield, Ohio. I'm a senior claims appeals specialist. That sounds complicated. So let me say it simply. I read the boring parts of contracts. The tiny words people skip. The parts nobody wants to read. I deal with insurance problems, payment rules, and legal language that decides who pays when something goes wrong. I started at the front desk years ago. I worked nights while studying. I pushed myself until I finally moved into appeals. Now people literally pay me to find the sentence nobody wants anyone to notice. That matters. Because in my family, I became the person who handled every problem. If my parents got confusing paperwork, they called me. If someone had a bad bill, they sent it to me. If anything had small print, it landed in my lap. I never complained. Helping felt like love. I liked being useful. But there's a problem when you become the family fixer. After a while, people stop seeing you as a person. You become a tool. You become the solution. People stop asking if you want to help. They just expect it. Because you've always said yes before. And eventually they stop noticing where you end and their problems begin. So when my sister needed help, of course everyone looked at me. They knew I read carefully. They knew I paid attention. They thought that made me safe. They forgot that reading carefully works both ways. 5 months before Easter, my marriage ended. There wasn't a huge fight. No screaming. No cheating. Nothing dramatic. It simply ended. Like closing a file that had been sitting open too long. I needed a place to stay while I looked for my own apartment. Renee offered her guest room. I was grateful. Very grateful. But I didn't live there for free. Renee wouldn't take rent money. So I paid in other ways. I bought groceries. I fixed their washing machine when it broke. I washed dishes every night. I stayed out of the way. I cleaned up after myself. I always kept a quiet list in my head. Not because I wanted to use it later. Just because I always do. And when I added everything up, I felt like things were even. Maybe I had even given more than I took. I stayed 6 weeks. The day my apartment deposit cleared, I packed my things myself. I carried every box. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment across town. And honestly, I loved it. My own door. My own space. My own quiet life. But my mother remembered those 6 weeks differently. She brought them up over and over. After everything Renee did for you. She always said it the same way. Like those words had weight. Like they meant something bigger. I usually stayed quiet. Because arguing with my mother never changed anything. Arguing with her was like arguing with rain. You couldn't stop it. You just waited for it to end. What I didn't know was that my mother had been saving those 6 weeks. Saving them like money in a bank. Waiting for the right day to spend them. And that day was coming. Now I want to be fair to Renee. Because I loved my sister. I really did. And I hurt for her. 2 years earlier, Renee had surgery. She had serious health problems. The doctors had to remove her uterus. The surgery saved her life. But it also took away the thing she had wanted most. A baby. She was 35. Before surgery, doctors had rushed to freeze embryos. Her eggs. Trent's sperm. A chance to still have a child one day. The dream wasn't gone. It just needed another path. So they tried. Again and again. They hired a surrogate through an agency. 3 different attempts. 3 failures. Every time they lost money. Every time they lost hope. I watched my sister slowly break apart. I drove her to appointments. I sat beside her in waiting rooms. I held her hand while she cried. I watched her stare out windows and pretend she was okay. I would have done almost anything for her. Almost. And that is what made everything hurt so much. Because they didn't come to me with cruelty. They came to me with pain. Real pain. And they used it like a key. The first strange moment happened on a Tuesday. Trent called me. That was already weird. We weren't close. He usually called maybe twice a year. Mostly for business questions. So when he asked, "Got anything big happening this year?" I frowned. I thought maybe he needed help with paperwork. "Not really," I said. "Just work and getting my life back together." Then he asked something strange. "So you're free?" Free. The word sat in my chest strangely. Free. I didn't know why. But I didn't like it. The next morning I told Dana at work. Dana had worked with me for years. She had a gift for noticing things. She stirred her coffee and frowned. "People don't ask if you're free unless they're planning to put something on your schedule." I laughed. But the feeling stayed. Because Dana wasn't wrong. At work, strange questions usually mean something. People gather information before making a move. I told myself family wasn't like that. I told myself I was overthinking. But part of me already knew something felt off. 2 weeks later my mother called. "Easter dinner this year is important," she said. I frowned. "Important how?" "Everyone's coming." She listed names. Renee. Trent. My father. Then she added one more. "Grandma Lorraine is coming too." That made me pause. Grandma Lorraine was 84 years old. She was the center of the family. When Grandma showed up, it meant something mattered. Then my mother said something else. "There's something we all want to talk about. Something good." That sentence sat heavily inside me. Something good. People say that right before something hard. I asked what it was. My mother changed the subject. I hung up and stared at my phone. Because suddenly something started bothering me. The whole family. Grandma there. An important conversation. No details. No explanation. I had seen this before. Not in families. In meetings. At work. Meetings where the decision was already made before anyone walked into the room. Meetings where people only wanted your agreement. Not your opinion. I almost didn't go. I really almost didn't. But I did. And a few days before Easter, something happened that made the feeling worse. I stopped by Renee's house to return a dish. She wasn't home. But Trent was. He let me in while talking on his phone. I walked toward the kitchen. Then I heard a printer. Page after page after page. I looked toward Trent's office without thinking. And through the half-open door I saw papers stacking up. I only saw the top page for 1 second. But 1 second was enough. Big bold letters. Gestational carrier agreement. My stomach tightened. Surrogate agreement. Then Trent suddenly stepped into the doorway. He smiled. Too fast. "Work stuff," he said. "Boring." I smiled back. Okay. Then I walked outside. But I sat in my car afterward. And I didn't start the engine. Because nobody had asked me anything yet. Nobody had even said the word surrogate. But somehow, the contract already existed. Nobody had asked me if I wanted to be a surrogate. Nobody had sat down with me. Nobody had asked, Olivia, would you even consider this? But the papers were already printed. That told me something important. This wasn't a question. It was a decision. And somehow, I had missed the meeting where everyone decided my future. That night, I called Frank, the lawyer who handled my divorce. Frank was honest. Sometimes painfully honest. I explained everything. I told him about the contract. I told him about Easter. I told him I thought my family wanted me to be a surrogate. Frank became quiet. Then he said something I never forgot. Olivia, never sign a surrogacy agreement written by the other side. I frowned. What do you mean? Both sides usually have lawyers. Separate lawyers. That's how people stay protected. I stayed quiet. Then Frank sighed. If your family already made a contract and expects you to sign it without your own attorney, that's a problem. I sat there staring at my kitchen wall. Because suddenly pieces started fitting together. The strange phone call. The word free. The family meeting. Grandma coming. The printed contract. I promised Frank something. I promised I would not sign anything before reading every word. Not one page. Not one sentence. Not one tiny line. The next evening Renee called. Her voice sounded soft. Careful. The way people talk when they want something. Mom probably hinted already, she said. We think maybe you could help us. There it was. Finally. She started talking quickly. About embryos. About family. About love. About how beautiful it would be. Then she said. I'll send you a draft. No pressure. No pressure. Then she said. We'll make it official Sunday. I almost laughed. Because no pressure followed by Sunday deadline was definitely pressure. I asked one question. Who's my lawyer? Silence. Then Renee laughed. Oh come on, Olivia. Family doesn't need lawyers. Family doesn't need lawyers. That sentence sat inside my head. Because usually people only say that when they already have one. The email came later that night. 31 pages. I sat at my kitchen table with water beside me. Then I opened the file. Page 1 looked normal. Page 2 looked normal. Page 3 looked normal. Everything looked clean. Safe. Friendly. And that's exactly why I didn't trust it. Because I knew something from years of work. Bad contracts never hide danger on page 1. Nobody hides the knife at the front door. They hide it later. So you relax first. Then stop paying attention. Then you sign. I kept reading. Then my phone rang. Mom. She didn't ask whether I liked it. She didn't ask what I thought. She talked like I had already agreed. You know you owe Renee, she said softly. My stomach dropped. There it was. The 6 weeks. Finally coming back. She let you stay with her after your divorce. I closed my eyes. After everything she's been through, this is the least you can do. I didn't argue. I simply said. I'm reading it carefully. She sounded happy. That's my girl. After we hung up, I sat very still. Because I understood now. This wasn't a request anymore. It had already become an expectation. Sunday wasn't a conversation. Sunday was supposed to be the ceremony. I went back to reading. Then I reached page 4. Section 4.3. I read it once. Then again. Then again. My stomach slowly twisted. Because suddenly I understood exactly what I was looking at. And I wished I didn't. The words were legal language. Complicated. Long. But after years of work, I knew exactly what they meant. The contract said I would be responsible for uncovered medical costs. Not only for the pregnancy. For previous fertility treatments too. Past treatments. Past costs. Past debt. I stared at the screen. Then kept reading. There was a penalty if I changed my mind later. More clauses. More costs. More responsibility. And Renee and Trent? They were protected. Protected from almost everything. I grabbed a pen and started doing math. When I finished adding things together, I sat frozen. $58,000. 58,000. I wasn't just carrying a baby. I was carrying debt. Their debt. My hand sat on the table. Very still. Because suddenly everything became clear. They didn't want only my body. They wanted my money too. I called Dana immediately. I read the important part. She became quiet. Then finally she said, "Olivia, that's not a gift." I swallowed. "No." She sighed. "That's an invoice." I laughed once. But there wasn't anything funny about it. I didn't tell Renee. I didn't tell Mom. Because if I warned them now, they would change everything. So I waited. Sunday arrived. I came early. I walked into my parents' house carrying deviled eggs. Then I heard voices. Low voices. Dining room. I stopped. Trent was speaking. "Don't let her talk about money." My heart stopped. Mom answered. "I'll bring up the 6 weeks if she hesitates." Then Renee spoke quietly. "I hate that we have to manage her." Manage me. Like I wasn't a person. Like I was a problem. Then Trent answered. "We're helping her do the right thing." I stood there frozen. They had a plan. Talking points. Strategies. Backups. I walked in smiling anyway. "Smells good in here." Nobody knew I heard. Grandma arrived later. She hugged me tightly. Then she smiled. "Oh, Olivia," she said happily. "I'm so proud of you for carrying your sister's baby." My chest hurt. Because they had lied to Grandma too. They told her the beautiful story. The clean story. Not the truth. Dinner started. Everything felt normal. Kids laughed. People talked. Ham sat in the middle of the table. Then I looked beside my plate. The contract sat there. Waiting. Nobody mentioned it. Not yet. Then Trent stood with his glass. "I want to make a toast." Everyone became quiet. He smiled at me. "To Olivia," he said. "The most generous person here." People lifted glasses. Smiles everywhere. Then Renee pushed the papers toward me. "We only need your signature." Mom leaned closer. "It's the right thing." Dad nodded slowly. Grandma looked hopeful. Everyone watched me. The whole room waited. I looked at the pen. Then at the papers. Then I felt something strange. Calm. Very calm. I picked up the pen. Everyone smiled. Then I turned to page 4. The smiles disappeared. I looked up. "Before I sign anything," I said softly, "I have one question." Silence. "Who is my attorney?" Nobody spoke. Trent laughed nervously. "It's standard paperwork. Family doesn't need lawyers." I smiled. "Interesting." Mom frowned. "Don't make this difficult." I reached inside my jacket. Then pulled out my own copy. Highlighted. Marked. Ready. I read all 31 pages. Renee suddenly looked pale. Trent stared at me. Then I opened page 4. I think everyone should hear this. The room became quiet. Very quiet. I read the words slowly. Then I explained them simply. I explained the debt. The costs. The responsibility. Then I looked around. They're asking me to take around $58,000 of debt. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Even the kids became quiet. Grandma slowly lowered her fork. Mom looked shocked. Dad stared at the table. Trent suddenly stood up. That's not what it means. I looked at him calmly. Then let's read it again. And I did. Slowly. Line by line. Nobody interrupted. Because they couldn't. The words were right there. Then Grandma looked at Renee. You were going to do this to your sister? Renee started crying. Real crying. Not pretty tears. Broken tears. Grandma, Did you read it? Renee couldn't answer. Because she hadn't. Now the room had changed. Before, everyone looked at me. Now everyone looked at them. Trent became angry. He slammed his hand onto the table. Oh, so now you're smarter than everyone? I stayed calm. Very calm. Because angry people get louder. Truth doesn't need to. You told me family doesn't need lawyers, I said quietly. Then I looked at him. But somebody already hired one. Silence. Complete silence. Renee cried harder. Then looked at me. Olivia, I just wanted a baby. My heart hurt. Because I believed her. I really did. But pain doesn't give someone permission to hurt others. I looked at her. I love you. Everyone stared. But not like this. Renee blinked. If I ever help, it will be fair. I looked around the room. Separate lawyers. Real protection. No debt on me. No pressure. Then I looked at Mom. You said I owed Renee. I kept my voice calm. I owed 6 weeks. I looked directly into her eyes. I never owed my body. I never owed $58,000. Dad suddenly spoke. His voice sounded broken. I didn't read it. He stared down. God help me. I stood up slowly. No yelling. No drama. I gathered my things. Left the pen sitting there. Still untouched. Then I looked around. The day you bring me a contract I'd let my own sister sign. I paused. That's the day I'll sign too. I kissed Grandma on her forehead. Then walked outside. Cool air touched my face. I drove home. To my apartment. My quiet. My own door. The next few weeks stayed quiet. Grandma made sure nobody pressured me again. Mom called later. It wasn't really an apology. But she sounded shaken. Trent never called. I wasn't surprised. 3 weeks later, Renee texted me. I'm sorry. I should have read it. I love you. I stared at the message for a long time. Then finally I wrote back. I love you too. My door is open for you. Not for the contract. We're different now. Not broken. Just honest. And maybe honesty should have been there from the beginning. Because real love never asks you to stop protecting yourself. And real love never tells you to skip reading your own page 4.